Hotep. I'm surprised. That's in North Carolina. Black folks in North Carolina, y'all too busy getting rich because everybody says, I'm moving to Charlotte. Like, what's down in Charlotte? But everybody's like, moving to Charlotte. So I go, like, I got to get on the plane. I got to go see what they got. Something's going on. When the brothers reached out to me, I wanted to try and understand what they were saying. They were saying ancestralisms. Well, I don't like isms. So I had to get into what they were really saying. And they're not saying anything different from what the ancestors have been saying for millions of years, or what I've been saying for decades, or Dr. Ben and others. So we have a problem here. We're at war, not just in America, because there's no such thing as a race called African American. There's African Americans. Africa is your race. America is your geopolitical place. And it's not inappropriate to say African American. You do live here. We pay taxes. We go to work. We catch hell. We do all the things that happens to you in America. This is our land. We built it with our blood, our sweat, and tears. We're not going to give it up to anybody. And I hope nobody in this audience is afraid of Trump, because we have to stop acting like there's something more than any other cracker has ever been. Right? So because we've got one who doesn't mind being profane. You ever seen a president of a nation being profane on international television with his words and accent? But we know they scraped the bottom of the cracker barrel on this go round, right? We live down here. I grew up in Georgetown, South Carolina. I even have a homegirl right here. Her mom and dad went to school, high school with me. So stand up, let them see you, John. This is like my new daughter. I just discovered her, right? And so I'm from the South, and get away from me. This is my home. I've been in this thing we call the movement since I'm a teenager, dealing with this demon. My grandmother was a root lady. Y'all know what that is. And so we lived on a plantation. It was called Arcadia. It was right across the river from Franfield, where our former First Lady's parents grew up. And much of my family worked over there. Most of us in that area, we came from Angola, Congo, Sierra Leone, and in later years, we came from Nigeria and Ghana. But our base people were Congo, Angola. And so we need to understand that. But the extraordinary thing about African Americans, meaning those who lived in North America more than any other part of the Americas, is that the British and some of the other thieves and murderers and genociders were so poor, they bought us from different other Europeans. They bought some of us from the Portuguese, some of us from the Spanish. So we end up coming from all over Africa, from Mozambique, from Congo, from Ghana, from Cameroon. So we probably represent the largest collection of African gene pool in any single African ethnic group anywhere in the world. And that brings us back to spirit. Because what is the spirit? Everybody in this place today, right, who think you are somebody based on the personality that you formed and the experiences you've had, all of you are dead people. Everybody in here have already died millions of times. When the brothers and sisters are talking about ancestralism, it took me a minute to make sure they weren't another group playing silly stuff. No, because we got folks running around saying Foundation of Black Americans without explaining what they're trying to say. I kind of understand what they're trying to say, but you can't say, I exist, but my mama and daddy don't exist. So if you say I'm Foundation of Black American, but I'm rejecting Africa, there's something wrong with your head, right? And so you're saying I'm ADOS, but I got no connection with Africa, and Pan-Africanism don't exist. And those kinds of things tell me that somebody has misled somebody. So I wanted to be sure, because I don't really go to places unless I believe in what people are doing. And so when the brother, I looked at the ancestralism, I said, okay, at least the ancestor thing is there, and I'm cool with that, right? So I'm going to have to say, don't mind me walking around. I got a bad knee. I fell. And when you're 80 years old and you fall, it don't get better really quick. And some of us are close to me, so we know that You gotta like warm it up.
Yes, sir.
But what I meant when I said everybody in here has died many times, because it's only possible to have life if it doesn't have an end to it, if it can't stop existing, right? And our ancestors in all of the systems, I use the Yoruba system like a lot of you, because that was the Yorubas were the last, well, the Igbo was the last group that they really defeated, but the numbers of Igbo brought to this country wasn't that large. The Yoruba was the largest group brought to America, because that was the largest ethnic group in West Africa. And you remember in those days, Nigeria didn't exist, so the Yorubas didn't just come from Nigeria, they came from all over West Africa. And that's where they came up with the term Lukomi. That wasn't a religion, that was a word that meant you belong to me and I belong to you. So when the ships would stop at different places and they would recognize from the scarification that this person was from the ethnic nation, they said, Lukomi. We getting on the slave ship together. We may not even speak the same language, but you belong to me and I belong to you. And then they came over here to Cuba, to Puerto Rico, to the United States, to Mexico, and we created a people out of the multiple African peoples that was put on those ships. Because we didn't just come from one village, one town, one ethnic nation. By the time that ship got full and left, they had 10, 20, 15 nations on there who didn't speak the same language, who did not practice their relationship towards ancestors in the same way. But the one thing all of them had in common, they knew that they were their ancestors. When your mother and father gave birth to you, they gave birth to themselves. That's the only thing they can give birth to. They gave birth to themselves. And they had been given birth to by the 4 people you call grand people, and the 8 people you call great, and 16 you call great, and the 20-something you call great, and so forth and so on, from the 32 to 64, up to the millions. Each one of us is a composite of millions of human beings haven't had an experience and recorded in what we call DNA, a memory, a record of those experiences. And so what we call African culture was the method by which we could recall those experiences, that we can recall the experiences of the ancestors. If you go to Ghana, which is one of my favorite places, and I just returned last week from there, Ghana and Kemet, you will find that all of the kings and all of the queen mothers that sits on a stool, which is the throne in Ghana, when they sit, they become automatically the ancestors. Now, when they're off of the stool, they put on their sneakers, you can have a beer together, you can hang out together because they're Nana so-and-so and they're Kwame so-and-so. But when they sit on that stool, they're no longer the human being that you had the beer with. Do you understand that? And everybody understands that. Now, we know that we are matter and we are energy. Matter of fact, the only way to describe African culture is to do a dissertation on quantum physics. And then you'd have a close sense of what our spirituality is all about. Because we are the universe itself. There's nothing contained in the universe, in substance nor function, that we are not. Now, our ancestors understood this. That's why they created the systems with parts. So you have the voodoo system, and they got the Loas. And we mistakenly, like the white man, call them gods. The ancient people didn't call the Loas gods. We got the Yoruba system, and they call them Orishas. We call them gods. They did not call them gods in the ancient days. You got, in Ghana, they call them the Obosun. And what they're talking about is the powers and laws of nature, cosmology, and ecology that our ancestors were able to isolate and discern and explain to themselves and then practice in their social habits that allow them to have the life we had. Now, one would beg the question, if we had all of that, how come this crazy white man was able to come in there and take it away? The question is, did they take it away? Or did you, in your fear of him and the false fear of death, make yourself feel like they've taken it away. You don't have to be responsible for maintaining it, or even better, retaining it. When I started saying some decades ago, we are gods having a human experience, I know other people have taken credit for it, but that's good too. People stopped letting me come and lecture at their places. Even the First World Alliance, who were my parents, I was told because I'd come to the audience and says, you can't be an African, a Muslim, a Hebrew, and a Christian too. And Brother Bill says, if you do that again, you're not speak here anymore. But Brother Bill knew better. I think I had a lot more power in Harlem than any one of them at that time. Because I am the only heir to Malcolm X in the sense of organization, structure, and strategy. When he got assassinated, I took over, 21 years old. I became the imam. I had to oversee the war and make the peace with the Nation of Islam, because I didn't believe black people should be at war. And it doesn't matter the mistakes we made. But come back to this thing about ancestors. You are the ancestors. There is no, when we put that matter in the ground, the 40, or what is it, 401 or 400 and whatever elements or minerals we made up of, comes to dust. If you could take all the water out of anybody in here now, we'd have a handful of dust. Right? Because most of it is water, right? The rest of the 401 other minerals or elements that make us up. The things that make up the rest of the cosmos and the rest of nature. You don't kill other human beings to eat when you get hungry, right? You go get a carrot, a cucumber, an orange, an apple, or a bird or a fish. You eat the rest of nature to be who you are. So are you not then the rest of nature? But we don't think of it like that. But we eat nature. We eat everything in nature to recreate ourselves on a daily basis. Cells die by the thousands, if not millions, every day because we're using them up. So to replace those cells, we eat the rest of nature. So are we not the rest of nature? In African culture, they teach you to understand that and revere that. But in this culture, they don't even let you have a relationship to that concept. You have no idea that you and the banana have more in common than the look, right? If you eat collard greens, are you not collard greens? No, I mean, seriously, think about it. You do not kill other human beings to replenish yourself on a daily basis, right? So what do? You eat everything else in nature. So you are everything else in nature. But not just the physical substance, you're the energy. You ate the thing to get the energy that's stored in it. You are the energy of everything else in nature. And everything else in nature had an ancestor too. This grass has an ancestor. You know, the grass dies, it rots, and new grass comes up. The tree, I was standing somewhere this morning, that's a big acorns in town. And so the tree dropped all these new acorns, and in every one of those little acorns is a new tree. So that acorn becomes the ancestor at the same time it becomes itself. When every one of you were born and you became this personality that you are, you also became the ancestors for the children you would bear, right? But before you could become the ancestors for those children you were bearing, you had to become the next stage of the people you call ancestors. You're nothing now but the present of yourself that was yesterday.
Yes.
You're the presence of yourself that was yesterday. And that's what our cultures and tradition teach us. Now, I'm supposed to be, they say, Baba Larisha, a priest of Oya. Well, what is Oya? We have books and we draw her as a pretty lady with locks, and she's running through the forest, and she becomes an antelope when she wants to. So I got this little horn on my altar at home. Sometimes I carry around a little horn. Everybody can see I'm an Oya man. But we put the image outside of the energy that's inside. Oya is something inside of me. Now they say Oya is the wind. That the wind is symbolic of what it is. And it's change. That thing in you, that energy in you that informs you when you need to change to better yourself. That force, that idea, that set of tools that allow you the courage to do whatever that step is you got to do to change yourself, that's Oya. That's what our ancestors call Oya. She is the door. She's supposed to be the guardian of the cemetery. Who's in the cemetery? Your ancestors. So if you Oya, you're supposed to guard the wisdom of yesterday. That's all ancestors mean. Because those people who we put in the ground, they're not in the ground, they're in you. Right? But there's a body of wisdom that they left by their experience on the earth that we should guard and learn from and allow to build us into the person we have to be so the next generation can take it higher. But you got to be conscious that that is what you're doing. And that's why we had spiritual science or sacred science. We didn't call anything religions in Africa. You know, even though religion simply refers to history. You know, it means to go back and get something. It means almost the same thing as Sankofa, actually. All right? It means to go back and get something. What is the something? The wisdom of your ancestors. What is that wisdom supposed to do? It's supposed to allow you to survive better than they did. We didn't survive America because we gave up. And we didn't survive America because of the church or because of the lodge. But we used the lodge and the church to help us survive America. Okay. In this country, we had the church. I used to be the most anti-church. When I stood up, the Christians were getting ready to pack this shit and run because as long as up there, it's a wrap. Ain't no Christianity going on down here today. And then one day I realized how well we took a tool that the enemy had twisted, turned, and poisoned, and we made it work for us to the degree it could work for us. Okay. Even though it had its birth in Africa, and we got to be clear about that. Christianity did not have its birth at the Nicene Conference. It had its birth in Africa even before it went to Ethiopia. And it really had its birth in Kemet. But not just the thing we call the Coptic Church, but the Coptic Church is simply a modernization of the Kemetic understanding of reality at that moment in time, cosmology and ecology. And so we gave it to the West. The Nicene Conference, I think one of the popes admitted that 8 out of the 10 of the initial people at that conference were Africans. So we were trying to civilize them so that they wouldn't be so crude, rude, and destructive on us, but it didn't work. They managed to outmaneuver us. But when they gave it back to us again in America, we worked magic with the Black church. But it wasn't just the Black church. Behind the Black church was Prince Hall Freemasonry. Something even Prince Hall ain't have the guts sometimes to say, and I have to be hard on my brothers and sisters. Because in the lives the masters know, I get privileges. Because every preacher in every one of those churches was a lodge brother. Every sister was an Eastern Star. But they couldn't come out in the open with what they knew about Kemet. You ever wonder why David Walker is mentioned in his appeal? He's talking about Kemet. How would David Walker know anything about Kemet? Anyone know what I mean by David Walker's appeal? Hold up your hands. There was a brother in the 1800s who wrote an appeal. He wrote a document, really, that was a call to arms against slavery. And he gave a huge critique of the American society. But in that critique, he talked about Kemet. And I remember when I first saw it, I wondered, how the hell does he know? He's enslaved, and this is the 1800s. How does he? Because he came out of the lodge. Because the lodge ain't what you think it is. Right? Even the church isn't what you think it is. Those were black things that white people corrupted and then tried to give it back to us. But we didn't forget what they were when they were black things, and we tried to make them to do black things again. You'll understand what I'm saying? How well our ancestors used those things? Otherwise, we would not have survived this place. because we didn't yet have the Yoruba concept. They were just coming into the country as enslaved people without an opportunity to set up their systems. We didn't have the Igbo concept yet. We had it within our consciousness, but we didn't have it in organized structures. But the church became the sanctuary where we could go into church and be Yoruba all day. We can go into church and be Igbo all day. That's what all that dancing and singing and shouting about. That wasn't about Europe. You got the Holy Ghost. When I became a Yoruba priest, they call that getting possessed. We call it getting the Holy Ghost. And if anybody, how many people went to the morning bench? Okay, I went to the morning bench. And you all know you couldn't get off that morning bench unless you what? Got possessed. Now they call it the Holy Ghost. But something had to get a hold of you that wouldn't let go. Now you may not know it, young man, but you find yourself one day you're on your knees. Next thing you know, you shouting up and down. You don't even know how you get there. Your folks is holding you and you just... And then they say you got the Holy Ghost. I would learn later, one of those Orisha spirits came to claim you and let you know who you belong to, right? But there was nobody to interpret that way because it wasn't safe to do it that way, even for those who knew how to interpret that way, because they wanted to keep us alive. And I was telling some brothers inside on an occasion when some crackers tried to kill me back when I was about 17 years old. And I'm talking on the real side. I'm talking about people trying to like, Kupatet Bulikai, take your life. And I'm running through the swamps and running in the marsh and, you know, hiding out in mud all night. And the two young black men who were supposed to be helping me, they got in a car and got a ride and went home and went to bed. But they were like 14 or 15. They didn't realize the danger I was in. And I remember when I would see them years later, they would just say, let's not talk about it. Because now they were adults and they understood. But the ancestors would not let me die on that dirty road in the marsh that night. Or any of the other nights. I learned very early that there was something called ancestors. There was something that was more powerful than we, the current personalities. That something is all of the millions of years of history that produced you, the individual. All those millions of years of history is your ancestors. Like right now, we sitting under this tent, we just planting our feet on the ground, we just comfortable, but we're spinning around the sun, right? Hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of miles an hour. And we spinning on our own orbit, all at the same. We don't feel dizzy. Better than that, the sun is flying through the Milky Way at millions of miles an hour. We don't even feel it. We are aliens in outer space and won't acknowledge it. This planet is in outer space like everything else in outer space, and we're on it. And all the light that comes from all of the source and all of the universe gets absorbed by our bodies like it gets absorbed by any other body in the cosmos. And it makes us up. But we are an intelligence because we are the universe itself. We are the universe. But even the universe have extremities. So we have a mutated extreme that has caused a lot of problems. Yes, the European is a mutation off of your gene pool. And it has mutated to the extreme that the only thing that will allow for this universe to be healthy is for you to be conscious of the fact of who and what you are. And that begins with acknowledging that you are your ancestors. And those brothers who was pouring the libation, and we say we revere them. Sometimes they let you know they exist. Though you don't have bodies anymore because they live in your bodies. And you have multiple ancestors. You have millions of ancestors living in you, as you. Now, my mother wanted to go to Ghana. She got sick. And so I promised I would try to take her to Ghana. So once I convinced the rest of the family, I'm taking her whether y'all agree or not. And she decided I'll go. And even her white nurse went to her family and said, I want to go and help Ms. Johnson. Her family said, you can go to Africa with Ms. Johnson. And I came home from Ghana to tell her, we going back next week. And she died on that day. right? And I'm laying up in a hospital with malaria. And I go like, why you wait until I finally hook it all up and I can take you home and you die on me? She was cool. My mom was a real cool lady. This is the lady who knew Malcolm X, who cooked for Dr. Clark, cooked for Dr. Ben. And when she got too sick to stay in New York, Dr. Clark and Dr. Ben would come to South Carolina and lecture in the AME church just for her. So her community can see her relationship to the movement. So she was always into Africa, always into the movement, and made sure her children were, especially me. She pushed me every single day, all the way. So coming home from Africa last week, and I carry all kinds of gadgets. I got my phone, I got my little clicker thing, I got my miniature printer, I got my computer. So I'm always getting stopped, right? So this time, security people stopped me when I'm coming out. So I said, okay, I got a new printer this time. It's only about this big. They said, no, it's not that thing. I said, well, the computer is over here. They said, no, it's not that thing. I said, well, I've got the pointer. They said, no. So there's something in the corner. So they're like, ain't nothing in the corner. They said, yes, look on the machine. There's something in that corner right there, and we got to scan it. So the only thing that was in the corner was a little black pouch that I carried my mother's picture, right? Because I set up my altar everywhere I go. Hook up all her little stuff and gadgetry. So I open it, and they says, why is the frame so heavy? I said, well, it ain't gold or nothing. I said, it's cast iron. But that's my mother, and I always take her. This is what we got to scan her anyway. So they scan, and then they apologize. But I said, Ma, you still raising hell. You let him, and you know why she let me know that she was with me? Because I took 2 of her great-grandkids this year for their first trip to Africa. 2 young girls, one 18, one 15, my grandkids. You know, our young lady are going through all kinds of mess with these young men, and they back with lost self. And with this, what this society say, I don't praise the hip-hop thing, I want young people to know, but I thought hip-hop was 99% poison and 1% refreshment. And so we need to figure out what's the difference. And we'll get there when we understand who our enemy is. That doesn't put down the brothers and sisters who heart intend to do good with their verses. But you've got to know when the enemy take your stuff and use it against you. And we haven't learned that well yet. But my mom, I mentioned the thing about my mom letting me know I am a living being. You took those babies because I had to do something to enter their consciousness so that they can learn to fight for themselves as young black women in a society that still tells them they're not beautiful. To hear my 15-year-old, when she was 14, says, I'm ugly. And I go like, Princess, you're the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life. But somebody, when she walks out of our door in the world, tell her, you're not beautiful. And she wants to fit into the world she's in, so she's looking for all of the ways to be beautiful and all of the behaviors to be beautiful to that world. So what are we doing? That's why what you're doing here today is beautiful, because you're trying to raise the level of consciousness and the level of education to a point that we can learn to transform these young people and protect them, teach them how to protect themselves. And I watched them struggle the first few days they were there. And I had to wake them up every morning with them getting angry with me. I said, you're gonna miss the bus. Well, Grandpa, listen. So you know what? I'm leaving y'all today. Get a taxi. Here's where I'm gonna be. You've never been in Africa before. You better find a way to find me. But I went crazy. I went to the manager and said, make sure them girls get a taxi driver. You get his picture, his license, and everything. And you send him to Nana's palace. But they didn't know that. They thought they got that taxi on their own. And they thought they got the Nana's palace on their own. And after that day, they didn't sleep late anymore because they know Grandpa was going to leave them. And when I watched the young one, when we got to the pyramids, the one who was the hardest to accept this new experience, come running back down to the bus saying, Grandpa, I went to the top, I saw the king's tomb, and I stood over the king. I mean, we know the king's not in that sarcophagus, but there she is with her arms open. Nobody told her to open her arm in the manner of Ma'at over that tomb. But she did it. So spirit, what we calling spirit is ancestral energy. Spirit is ancestral energy. When God, the thing you call God, decided to be human, it became a black woman. It decided that. The thing. God is not a man or a woman. That's other people's craziness. But that totality of being, when it decided I'm going to be human, it decided that. And it decided to be a black woman. And she gave birth to all the rest of us. One ancestor. The only ancestors beyond her is the thing you call God itself. If you understand that, you'll understand why we venerate the ancestors in Africa. Because we know our primary ancestor is God itself. Okay. And that our first mother, who they imitated and called Mary because they didn't understand our story, so they thought it was a particular woman. Everybody sitting in here that's female, you're Mary. Everybody sitting in here female, you're Aset. There was no particular woman named Aset. Every female is Aset because every one of you will go through what she went through if you live this life. Every brother is Asar, and every brother is Haru. She not only gave birth to Asar, she gave birth to Haru. Well, she not only gave birth to Haru, she gave birth to Asar. It's like the sun. The sun gives off light. You know, they argue for years. Is it sunbeam or is it sun particle? Well, it's both. But what the sun gives off is an aspect of itself. Every sunbeam, every sunlight contains the totality of whatever the element is that's in the sun. So you contain the totality of whatever the element is that is in the thing you call God. If you understand that and understand the relationship to that and it being your ancestors, you then understand why these young people are talking about ancestralism, that we have to come back to making sure and being clear that we revere the ancestors. Because if you're not following and if you're not being instructed and informed by the wisdom of your ancestors, your mind is being instructed and informed by the wisdom of your enemy's ancestors. Now, which one do you want? Right? Which one do you want? And so we have to find methodologies. And all culture is nothing but teaching tools to teach you ideas, concepts, and principles. Dancing isn't culture, it's a tool of culture. Singing is not culture, it's a tool of culture. Writing poetry is not culture, it's a tool of culture. Well, what are those tools there to do? To teach you concepts, ideas, and principles that keep you focused, that keep you centered, okay? That keep you in line with the universe. No one can defeat us. Look at us. They haven't defeated us. We got beat up here and there, but they have not defeated us. Anywhere in the world, we have not been defeated. I got to be blessed to meet Thomas Sankara when he came to America. And they took him out. They were better off with Thomas than with Abraham. Because they really got an issue now. Because this brother's got Thomas in him and other ancestors that Thomas woke up. But it's not just Abraham, it's the president of Mali. It's the president of Niger. And we watched the youngster in Senegal growing up while he's at the same time taking the lead of that country. We're watching the young brother in Chad waking up. We're watching the brother in Ghana doing all he can. And I hope y'all didn't miss that America assassinated 8 of our people 2 weeks ago in a helicopter crash in Ghana. I was on the stage with 3 of those people 3 days before that. These are young black men that want to make Africa better, that want to make the Africa that we want to see, that want to make the Africa that's going to be good for our children. And these things killed them. But the man they wanted, show you how powerful the ancestor is. He's the minister of mines and minerals. He looks like Khalid Muhammad. And I asked him that day, I says, anybody, you ever heard of Khalid Muhammad? He said, I read Khalid every night. And the man, I said, anybody ever told you look like Carly? He said, yeah. When he got to the heliport that morning, last Wednesday, they had taken on an extra security man, so there was no seats for him. So he said, my driver will then drive me and meet you at the destination. Of course, the other 8 didn't make the destination. So they killed the Minister of Defense. They killed the Minister of Environmental Affairs. They killed the number 2 man in the intelligence network. They killed the pilot, a decorated pilot. They killed the security man and 2 other parliamentarians. And Ghana is still mourning. I think yesterday they had the last 6 funerals. I mean, Friday. No one is saying out loud, except me, who did it. America did it. Okay? Because they don't want Ghana to ally with Burkina Faso in the way they're going to ally with Burkina Faso, no matter what they do. So this is to intimidate the president, but I don't think Muhammad is going to be intimidated, nor the young men and women around him. And you know the vice president of Ghana is a black woman, and she don't play. If you study her history, she's an extraordinary African woman. And I raise that because, yes, they may have taken the bodies out of their lives, but what they did was created 8 more ancestors they're going to have to fight and they can't see. Okay? But we've got to know how to call them into being. We've got to know how to tell them you still live. We've got to know how to tell them I need you here or I need you there. We didn't get through this thing because we didn't know what we were doing. All those root men and root women that live right here in Charlotte, that live all up and down these coasts, who did their thing that we were afraid to know about, kept us here. And we have to learn things. Like I walk around, I walk around with stuff in my pocket. You know what I'm saying? People say, Small, you crazy. No, I'm not crazy. My godmother's a little short lady. She was my goddaughter. Her mom was my godmother. Her mom died, and she took over our shrine, which is in Chaguanas, Trinidad. And our shrine came to Trinidad from Carriacou in the Grenadines. And it came to Carriacou in the Grenadines in the 1700s, the early 1800s from Haiti after the death of Dessalines. And there was a turn against the voodoo community, and a lot fled to New Orleans, to other islands in the Caribbean, especially Trinidad. And so therein my shrine is. And she knew I was traveling a few weeks ago, so she jumped on a plane and said, Baba, I got some medicine for you. I'm not even sending it with your daughter or others. I'm bringing this medicine sitting at your table. You will drink it in front of me, and I will give you something to carry, and then I'm flying back to Trinidad. Now, some may say that's all foolish. But me, I know without that, I'm an ancestor. Okay? I know without that, I'm an ancestor. Because those are the other ancestors saying, you still got some work to do. We're going to keep you in that body as long as you can do it without breaking it up and getting it injured. So I had to give up my cold beer. I like a little Merlot every now and then. I do cheat and get one of them. I had one last night. But for the most part, I try to keep a healthy body. I've never used drugs. I've never really exploited alcohol. But I've been, except for falling and banging up my knees and stuff, I've been basically healthy. I've been a martial artist for 50-something years. Even got me a little red belt. I don't think I deserve it, but the brothers think I should have it. But the point I'm making, every one of us, we are eternal. Every one of us, we are eternal. Who would think, and because you're wearing it out, I'm gonna have to talk to you, that a brother like Prince Hall would pop up in Boston, just as the American Revolution is ending, and would create out of a system that the whites had taken from us and called Freemasonry. Because see, while they were doing the Freemasonry, we were still doing what Dr. Ben called the craft. But we can't do the craft in the open, so the craft must hide behind the Masonic lodge. And I hope y'all heard that real quick. I am mind my business. I ain't gonna mess with your business. Come on after that. But I'm trying to tell you, we never gave up our systems. We never gave up our way. Our weakness was we had no way to carry out the intergenerational transmission of our wisdom to the body of our children in a safe way. Because the school system in America was designed to make sure we couldn't teach our own babies. And I grew up in a school system. I never had a white teacher until I went to college. Where I was in the same classroom, one room classroom, half the size of this tent, from first grade to seventh grade, with one teacher, Miss Betty Murray. And all of us graduated, and all of us could read and write, and all of us could do a whole lot of other things that they say we shouldn't be able to do. Because what was in the classroom was love. What was in the classroom was honor and respect. What was in the classroom was the aspiration to recreate the future with the next generation. And so we have to understand, when you talk about ancestors, you're talking about the stages of your existence in each cycle of life. Now the Yorubas, for those who are Yoruba, we call it awo. I mean, we go and we come. And we call the family the Ibi. I mean, whatever Ibi you were born in, that's the one you're going to come back in. You're not going to come back in his family. You're not going to come back in her family. You're going to come back in the family that you originally started this process called you millions of years ago. And a sister was reading about the conversation one had with the baby in the womb, because the first rites of passage occurs when she announced, I'm pregnant. And that is the first rites of passage. The last rites of passage is when you do the last rites when one has passed on. There's multiple stages of rites of passages that we go through in life. And each one of those stages teach us something. It's a school of thought to understand the environment we're in. And that's what we learn from the ancestors. You heard those brothers drumming today? Now, I don't know how great a drummer they are. And I know Bubba is a master because I'll be seeing a smile. I watch them fingers and watch him hitting that djembe. I know we know what he's doing. And those songs we hang on the drums, some of them are dissertations in your history. There's stories that's kept in rhythm that needs to be translated on paper so you can realize you didn't lose your history. We've saved them in our music. We've saved them in our rhythm. We've saved them in our dances. Those dances tell stories about yesterday. The music tells stories about yesterday, about you when you were yesterday. You are now today. But you today was the same you yesterday who you called grandma and great-grandma. That was you yesterday. Them babies you yelling at, them grandbabies, that's you going forward into tomorrow. So when we say ancestors, you got to keep that all connected up. You got to keep it all connected up. Because your ancestor is you. Yet your ancestor is the repository of all of the historical experience you've had since God decided to be you. God decided to be you. If you understand that, you understand there's a piece, it's called the pyramid text. I think Tony Browder and Francis Welsing and Akmi Ra and Theophila Benga translated a piece out of the pyramid text that went kind of like, this is supposed to be what we call God, Amen. But Amen is not a person. We paint a picture, but it's not a person. That's called an anthropomorphic representation of a concept, idea, and principle. And so Amen says, when I realized that I exist, I understood that existence exists. And so I call existence into existence so that existing might exist. And when I realized that I existed, this is supposed to be the God of God, the Big Mac-a-do, right? He said, Ma'at was at my side. Like, I didn't create Ma'at. I didn't create the feminine principle. I didn't create two steps, rights, and harmony and balance. When I realized I existed, it existed at my side. That's in the pyramid text. Then he went further. He says, and then I coughed up Shu, meaning the gases and the things that we see, we can't see up in the sky. And then I coughed up Tepnut, which is the moisture and the other things that we breathe every day, but don't realize we're really breathing water. We're really amphibious, and air is nothing but thin water. But that's another whole lecture. But then he said, they gave birth to Geb, the earth, and Nut, the elements that make up the planets and everything else. And then they gave birth to Asar and a Set, and Nephthys and Set, the four beings. and they gave birth to the rest of us. But he goes on in the dissertation in the pyramid text. This is God having a dissertation. And God said, having created everything that my heart desired, I, Amen, I, the creator, I then expanded in them, meaning God is in every and all things. This is the oldest book we got to go and look and listen to some of this stuff. But he went further. The last line is what gets me, because it has no explanation, but it gives all the explanation. Now, this God done did all of this. He done expanded in everybody. He done created the universe. He done created the cosmos. He done created the earth. He done created the human. He said, I heka. Heka means what the Christians or the Jews would call the word. It means through my vibration, I brought all of these into being. And then he turns and said, but I come from my mother, Nun. And that's how he ends the dissertation. That I come from the black primordial waters, which is the feminine element of undifferentiated matter in cosmology that is called Nun by the ancient Egyptians. And we call it black matter in today's quantum physics. Now, how in the world can we have such a dissertation so far back in history and not realize, with all the knowledge we have today, yesterday and today is really the same day? Do you understand it? Yesterday and today is really the same day. Yeah. And if you remember your ancestors, if you revere your ancestors, you'll realize that you are, period. And you always have been, period. And you will always be, period. And the rituals and ceremonies and the dances and the music and the poetry and the drumming, all of those are the things that are there to help keep you focused and on point to understanding that fact. So ancestralism, I came first, I said, I'm gonna beat up on these brothers. I'm sick of these isms. Everybody got an ism. But I sat up last night till late. Me and some of my comrades from our organization, we went back and forth and thought, you know, they're on point. They're right on point. And you all need to support them in getting these ideas clear and getting these ideas straight. Because when we learn to revere our ancestors, we'll truly learn to love ourselves. When we learn to truly love ourselves through mastering and having an understanding of your historical experience, you learn to love the divine. And when you learn to love the divine that is both in you and you all at the same time, then you know how to love another. But when somebody say, I love you, and you look at them and see, well, they don't love themselves, how are they gonna love me? And you can't love yourself if you don't learn to love the divine. You can't love the divine unless you figure out what that is. You can't figure out what that is until you turn back to your ancestors, and your ancestors are gonna give you a dissertation called your history. Then you know who you are going forward. So ancestralism is on point. It's what we pour the libation for in every culture in Africa, and even in ancient Kemet, you see them using 2 bottles. They were serious. They be pouring 2 libations at one time. And so they were trying to leave a message for us that we should never forget ourselves yesterday, because it is the self of yesterday that's going to tell you how to handle tomorrow when you get there, because you're going to get there. You can either get there with no memory or you can get there with some memory. Some people who rise to the level where they say, I've reached my spiritual space, they can remember when they were the other person. But we call them mystics and mysticals. No, they're the same human being. They've just allowed themselves to master their history, to learn their culture, to remember their grandmother. When you get in trouble, and I'm gonna bring this to an end, but when you get in any kind of crisis, the first thing in your mind, go back to one of your parents. What would they have said to me? How would grandma work herself? What would grandpa say under these circumstances? What would ma say under these circumstances? But remember, everything they ever said to you is still within you, like a library for you to consult. But you have to know, in order to consult that library, you've got to respect those who built the library. They are the ancestors. And once you learn to love your ancestors, you have thoroughly begun the process of loving yourself. And once you've mastered loving yourself, you have mastered loving God. And once you master loving God, you are willing and able to do what Malcolm X and Dr. King and Marcus Garvey and others die for the rest of us. And that's what those people did. They understood that no one can take their lives away. The Honorable Messiah Marcus Garvey speaks for himself. But there's one myth I want to dispel. He was not an enemy to Booker T. Washington. And in fact, Booker T. Washington was the best friend he had in North America. And it was Booker T. Washington that invited him to North America. The British didn't want to let him come. About 10 years before he came, there was a conference called the Conference on the Negro World, held at Tuskegee University. And about 10 persons came from Jamaica, but the British wouldn't let Garvey come to the conference. There were people there from Malawi, from Ghana, from Nigeria, from South Africa, but they wouldn't let Garvey come. But the report went back to him, and him and Booker began to communicate. The letters you can find in the Schaumburg Library today. And so Booker finally fought a battle. If you remember, there was a law in the books. America was trying to come up with a law that didn't allow any black folks from the Caribbean or Africa to come to America. Well, it was Booker T. Washington that led the fight that killed that law. It didn't get passed. Had that law got passed, Garvey would have never gotten here in America. Garvey wanted to come and teach at Tuskegee, but Booker said, no, you can't bring that teaching out here. You know what I'm saying? This is too deep in the South. You got to go into the Northeast. And when you read those letters in the Schaumburg, you see that they were two brothers that had great respect for one another and the knowledge and the love of race that they both had. Of course, Mr. Booker would die a few months before Mr. Garvey got here. My contention, as it's been, and people have heard me over the years, that he was murdered by the state, that he was poisoned in New York at a meeting where he was supposed to be settling a rift between him and Monroe Trotter. And a bunch of Jews set up the meeting, as they always do, and we stupid enough to go to the meetings and eat and drink. My grandmama told me, said, boy, I blessed you, and the only way they can get you is if you let them come through your mouth. He's like, I got everything else. Okay? And so Booker, when he left that meeting, was sick. They put him in a hospital, St. Luke's Hospital in New York. And they're telling us that he died from gout. That's a bunch of bull. That's a bunch of gout, right? When he didn't get well, he sent a telegram to Tuskegee, asked his wife and aide to come and get him. He said, if I'm going to die, let me die at Tuskegee. And the political myth is that he died at Tuskegee. He did not die at Tuskegee. He died on a train when they pulled into the station in Baltimore on the way to Tuskegee. And then they took the body home. But Garvey came anyway. And as Tony Martin wrote in his books on Marcus Garvey, and no one has written as much on Garvey as Tony Martin did, Dr. Tony Martin, God bless his soul, he quoted Garvey as saying, I've come to implement the Tuskegee model. And a large part of the Tuskegee model became the UNIA. And there was a woman. Y'all said, I always remember Garvey's sidekick. Y'all see her all the time, and no one thinks much of her. Whenever you see the photograph of all those brothers, there's one tall lady standing right in the middle of them. Her name is Henrietta Benton Davis. She was the number 2 person in the UNIA. Okay. And when Garvey went to prison, she was the one he left in charge. Of course, the men tried to unseat her, but she was a little too tough for them. Study that lady as well as you study Marcus Garvey. The young brother who read his poem said all that needs to be said about his thoughts on who he was and what his responsibility was. And he lived up to that responsibility, bringing together the largest organized group of Africans anywhere in the world since or before or since, around ideas that we now call Pan-Africanism, ideas of unifying African people into one people. We are one people. You can go into any household in America, we go from light yellow to black blue, and we come out the same woman's belly, and we're in the same house, and then we get confused when we get out of our house by what other people got to say about who we are. We know who we are. We are Africans. Period. We are Africans. And once we're clear on that, everything else is simple. And we don't have to worry about what part of Africa. It's good. I did my DNA thing with African ancestry. Good. Even I knew where some of the family was from. It's good, and that really helps boost you a little bit. But when we left Africa, there was no borders there. All of that came in 1800 after the Berlin Conference. There was no borders. There was no Sierra Leone or Liberia or Ghana or Nigeria. We left Africa, and we are Africans. And we had different ways of dancing and different ways of drumming and different ways of singing. But guess what? We were singing, dancing, and drumming about the same thing, cosmology, ecology, and our role in it. So revere your ancestors. Work with ancestralism. Work to make sure that any household in any of our community in America know not a day should pass when you don't pour some libation. Not a day should pass if you don't even have the water, pour libation with your thoughts.
Right.
Thinking about those people who were you yesterday. They weren't somebody else. That was you. You're in another matter configuration. We will spill this matter, bury the dust in the ground. The water will evaporate back, but you give it time to seep. And the white man is smart, you know. He sticks us in the ground in a wooden box that's in a steel casket or metal casket that's in a cement box to keep you down there. That's why the Muslims and the Jews, they bury in a wooden box or just wrap in some cloth so you can go back to the earth. And your water can evaporate back to the sky and come down as raindrops on the vegetable that you eat for your daily meal. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
You're just part of the ecological process and the cosmological process. And yet you have something that we don't see anything else in nature have. You can recognize yourself as being the being without being afraid. So y'all afraid, oh Lord, this man done talk some stuff. I gotta go to Jesus, please forgive me for going to that meeting. That brother Small just messed up today, Lord. He said that you ain't real, but I'm something. Oh Lord Jesus. I was with my niece today, the girl called Jesus so much, I got scared. But I understand why she called, because that's all she knows how to call. And even in the calling of Jesus, you're calling on energy, you know. But it depends on how you understand the energy to be. But we are Africans, period. We are people at war because there's a thing in the world that's trying to destroy the world. The white man isn't just trying to destroy us. We represent the epitome of the dynamic of nature itself. He's destroying nature, the water, the air, the plants. He is attacking God itself because he felt in his mutated deprivation, he's angry with the rest of us. And we've got to put it in check, even if it means taken completely out of existence. But you can't do that if you got his mind in place of your mind. You got to have your mind, and the only way you're going to get your mind is to consult your ancestors and say, make me you. Make me you. I am you. You are me. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes, sir. Right.
And we've been doing it to some degree, but you got to be conscious of what you're doing. All content should have what? Intent. All content should have intent. You should know what you're doing. You should be deliberate about what you're doing.
On purpose.
And when your content is guided by intent, you're already the victor. It's just the mopping up detail and getting control. But we are the ancestors. The ancestors are us. Peace and blessings.
Oh.